And we are live. Welcome back to the LOOPCast. Today, we are sponsored by Providence Press. And I actually have one of their books in front of us, Kiss Me Goodnight. As I've mentioned previously on the show, about all I read are children's books currently to my toddlers. So if you want to mix up Curious George, Thomas the Train, you want to get in some Catholic literature, it's really adorable. It's got great cartoons. Cartoons is artwork, not cartoons, but it's a great book. Highly recommend. Thank you so much for sponsoring the episode. Guys, we're back. Josh, Erica, and Tom with you today. I will say, many of you in the chat, welcome. I've already received a few emails specifically requesting a specific person of this show that they wanted to hear their take on something that happened yesterday. And you guys can guess. This could be a fun guessing game.
Yeah.
I'll ruin it.
You're saying which one of the three of us they want to hear about a certain topic that might have hit the news within the last
24 hours.
36 hours or so.
Yeah. It might be.
Hey, and you know what? I will say someone in the chat, shout out to TemCC1967. I hope the good-looking Tom is here today.
Oh.
Sorry,
well,
Tom.
good-looking Tom's not. He's not here. He was on Monday, so we got the ugly one this time.
Oh man, Tom McCluskey. Sorry guys, Tom McCluskey not here today. Sorry to disappoint. Special thank you to producer Rosie for filling in for me yesterday. All is well. Hopefully I have a baby girl coming here pretty soon. Looking forward to that. Special shout out, Sarah Chastain, marketing manager. It's her birthday today. And then I got one more thing to get through, and then we're going to give the people what they want.
Yeah, Abraham Lincoln too. But.
And Abraham Lincoln.
Yeah, it's Abraham Lincoln's birthday. Oh my gosh.
Where are we at on Abe? Is he good, bad?
Love him.
Okay, good. Yeah. Nice. Okay, cool. I can do that. So, but before we get into that, I have another thank you to give out. Charity Mobile.
Whoop.
Okay, this is not Charity Mobile. You got to replace. Okay.
He's getting back in the saddle. You give him a day off and it's all good.
My mind is in many places.
Yeah, I feel kind of scattered too.
People want to know how your wife's doing, because she was sick. We told, we said you were being a good husband.
We asked for prayers.
Okay, yes. Update for the chat. My wife is doing well. And my mom is in the chat today. Shout out to my mom that came into town to help take care of my son, take care of my wife. So, yes, my wife is doing well. I really appreciate all the thoughts and prayers. If you guys could pray for my family, birth is a traditionally fun event for all involved. It's going to be amazing. Looking forward to falling in love all over again, but a little bit nerve-wracking. But yeah, we got to talk about Charity Mobile. So Charity Mobile, the pro-life phone company. When you switch to Charity Mobile, 5% of your monthly plan price goes to the pro-life, pro-family charity of your choice. And no extra cost to you. It's everyday living, made effortless giving. It's time to make the switch. With the same nationwide coverage as the major carriers, Charity Mobile has a variety of plans to fit every need, from basic talk and text options to unlimited data, and you can get up to 8 lines. They offer a range of phones, from simple flip phones to the latest 5G smartphones, or you can bring your own compatible device. Plus, there are no contracts, no termination fees, and a 30-day guarantee, so there's no risk in giving them a try. Charity Mobile has been in business for nearly 30 years, providing live US-based customer service by phone, chat, or email. So why not buy the way you believe, support causes that matter to you and your everyday phone use? New customers can get a free phone after instant credit, plus free activation and free standard shipping with promo code LOOPCast. I believe Afro Sam in the chat actually personally endorsed Charity Mobile. They're a great company. Happy to get our chat over to them, by the way you believe. And thank you so much for sponsoring this episode. Appreciate you guys, Charity Mobile. So before we get into reactions, I think it's important to just set the stage with what happened yesterday. Pope Francis sent an unprecedented letter to the USCCB, specifically regarding immigration. Okay, so I'm going to share my screen. This is what the AP thought of that event. Pope rebukes Trump administration over migrant deportations and appears to take direct aim at Vance. Okay, so Pope Francis issued a major rebuke Tuesday to the Trump administration's plans for mass deportations of migrants, warning that the forceful removal of people purely because of their legal status deprives them of their inherent dignity and, quote, will end badly.
Let's just start right at the top real quick.
Okay.
Usually we're very critical of media and their headlines, but that's actually fairly accurate, actually.
It is really accurate.
Yeah.
Good job, AP.
Okay. I'm going to finish it out. Francis took the remarkable step of addressing the U.S. migrant crackdown in a letter to the U.S. bishops, which appeared to take direct aim at J.D. Vance, his defense of the deportation program on theological grounds. Okay. Now, Josh, you said it's accurate. I typically never trust these, so I actually wanted to go to the letter itself. And so I went to the letter itself and read it. I have some of it here for you. The three main sections we're talking about are section 4, 5, and 6. If you'd like to go find that, Rosie, you can send a link to the actual letter itself. I will share section 4 here. We can go through it to make sure we're not just talking about what the AP says, what the media says, what was actually written and sent to the USCCB, okay? So section 4, I followed closely the major crisis that is taking place in the United States with the initiation of a program of mass deportations. The rightly formed conscience cannot fail to make a critical judgment and express its disagreement with any measure that tacitly or explicitly identifies the illegal status of some migrants with criminality. At the same time, okay, Josh, gotta keep going.
Rein it in, Josh. Give him 3 minutes.
At the same time, one must recognize the right of a nation to defend itself and keep communities safe from those who have committed violent or serious crimes in the country or prior to arrival. That said, the act of deporting people who in many cases have left their own land for reasons of extreme poverty, insecurity, exploitation, persecution, or serious deterioration of the environment damages the dignity of many men and women and of entire families and places them in a state of particular vulnerability and defenselessness. 5, this is not a minor issue. An authentic rule of law is verified precisely in the dignified treatment that all people deserve, especially the poorest and most marginalized. The true common good is promoted when society and government, with creativity and strict respect for the rights of all, as I have affirmed on numerous occasions, welcomes, protects, promotes, and integrates the most fragile, unprotected, and the vulnerable. This does not impede on the development of a policy that regulates orderly and legal migration. However, this development cannot come through the privilege of some and the sacrifice of others. What is built on the basis of force and not on the truth about the equal dignity of every human being begins badly and will end badly. So before I get into the section about J.D. Vance, we're going to take a pause here. Josh, what do you think about this letter?
Well, it's tough. The most charitable explanation I can offer is that he is being very poorly advised on the situation in the United States. Because the fact of the matter is, Donald Trump came into office not even a month ago, and there were 300,000 immigrant children that have been gone missing. The trek from South America through the Darien Gap in Panama up through Mexico is a dangerous trek. The migrants that are going through this pay a ton of money to these wicked, evil coyotes who traffic drugs and women and children. And 68% of the migrants have reported to, this is not just some statistic from the Trump administration. This is Doctors Without Borders. 68% of migrants reported being victims of violence on this dangerous trek, right? Because this magnet of the open border. 1/3 of women were sexually abused, at least.
That's
of course, the thing is, a lot of them won't come forward.
Right.
And so you think to yourself, this is a true trail of tears. It is untold human misery. Actually, securing the border, which we've done over the last 3 weeks, the number of illegal crossings is already like 5% of what it was before.
It's come down 93% in just 2 weeks. That's
so again, we get once. I just feel like this is a major failure of this letter, because it's like, well, of course you can deport violent criminals, but not anyone else, and don't try to make anyone else who broke your law a criminal. Like, excuse me, wait, what? And again, it's not a circumstance. It's not like we're talking about like a total of like 1,200 people or something like that, like 2,000 people total. In that case, the Pope would be like, you could understand if the Pope were like, you got 300 million people, you could probably handle 2,000 people. Just suck it up, Buttercup. Like, I could almost understand that. But we're not talking about that. We're talking about not just hundreds of thousands. We're talking about millions of people who have come into this country illegally. So I really have to understand here, like, I try to be a good son of the church. I've read the catechism. Is there something in there that's, because it says countries have a right to a border and to protect themselves and enforce their laws. is somehow the United States not included in that list? Is there some sort of exemption I don't know about?
Yeah.
Like, I don't understand this. Like, so, I mean, again, why, I'd like to point out Barack Obama himself deported millions of people who came into this country illegally.
During Francis's pontificate.
And when Pope Francis came to the White House, what did Pope Francis speak about? Climate change.
Right.
So, I mean, again, it's just, what is going on here? I mean, it's hard to be charitable. This is just, I don't know.
Yeah, I think, and for me, like the most, I try to read it the most charitably, like you said, Josh. I'm like, well, he's getting bad information. He has bad actors. Every time I think Francis, we should take him at his word. He likes a mess. He likes disruption. I think he likes this sort of, we want to become this global one nation humanity where we all can like meet each other in this sort of French Revolution notion of fraternity and, all of that. I also, Josh, you mentioned all of the suffering of the migrants who, lured by this promise of the open border, and you can just live in the wealthiest country of the world and never be kicked out. Like that affects the migrants, but also the effect of mass migration. Who does that hurt the most in the country that receives them? It hurts the bottom. It hurts the poor and the marginalized. We've talked so extensively about the creation of this shadow slave economy where people come in illegally, they work for dirt cheap wages, scrubbing our toilets, and the left is like, who will pick my avocados? And that
you think the cost of eggs are expensive now?
Oh, yeah, right. You willing to pay more for your blueberries in your smoothie? I'm like, yes, actually, that would be an acceptable trade. But that hurts not only economically, but also culturally, the breakdown of the lower classes in America itself. And that affects Hispanics who are legally here. It affects African Americans, all these minorities that supposedly we're so worried about. It redounds on those families and those communities first, that influx of migration. Well, and again, there is no nuance in this letter addressing that.
Well, and all this talk about respecting the inherent dignity of these migrants, like, why is it? I mean, that's not even in dispute. Like, we're not saying that they don't have dignity. We're just returning them home. It's not like we're calling for them to be executed. I mean, what the hell are you talking about? Like, there is inherent dignity on people, even when they break your laws. It's like, yeah, okay, sure. I mean, what, can we not return them home? I don't understand this. I mean, what about the inherent dignity of people in small towns across America who are overrun by, illegal immigrants? I just don't understand this.
Yeah, it reminds me a little bit of like the whole Black Lives Matter thing. Like, that became such a rallying cry, and all the people in America that didn't like the movement were like, well, so you hate black people? I was like, no, I think black lives do matter, but no one's saying that they don't. So we're having like arguments about things. It's such a straw man argument, but it's utilized on behalf of people that wish to see systematic change of not just the government of the United States, but the makeup of the country itself.
The culture.
And I think the word privilege is so telling. Like, there's so many things that I'd like to say here. I mean, one, probably not everyone listening to this is Catholic. I've actually had people who aren't Catholic now start sending this to me. And it's very frustrating for me because this almost feels like some inside the family type activity. Like your dad, you have a disagreement with your dad or something like that. And your dad maybe isn't acting the right way, or you're not acting the right way. And you have this kind of laundry that should be taken care of in house. But it, of course, now is spilled outside of house, and your dad's actions are very public. And now people are asking you, the son, like, hey, what's going on with your dad here? And in some ways, like, that's almost like a secondary conversation. Like, no, none of this shakes my belief in Catholicism or, apostolic succession or Rome. Maybe an opportunity to talk about what ex cathedra is or things like this. But I always encourage people to go back, if you have not looked into Argentina in the mid 1900s. I promise Pope Francis will make so much more sense if you understand where he came from, where he was raised. He grew up in a period of time in the Great Revolution, mid 1900s Argentina, where communists, Peronists, ended up being the good guys. And so his views on politics more broadly are going to be much more aligned with that kind of mid-1900s Argentinian. And so for someone in the West, you might be like, why does it seem like everything Pope Francis says on politics has kind of a jagged edge towards capitalist Western societies? And it's because...
And especially a seemingly hatred towards the United States.
Right, a hatred towards the United States. Because in this conversation, he's talking about things built upon force. There's some other countries that were built upon force, namely Russia and China, that you haven't lifted a finger to criticize at all. Largely, you've given over control of the Catholic Church to the CCP. They decide who the bishops are. Now, that's a huge scandal in my mind. There's a current genocide going on of the Uyghur population in China that you have not said anything about. So it's the hypocrisy is so obvious when it's like, it just seems like every other country has the right to defend their borders, decide what people are in their country, what the common good of that nation is, except the United States. It was so telling when he said, oh, you have the right to defend yourself, but people marked as criminal is wrong. And I was like, well, what is violating an immigration policy then? I mean,
what does the rule of law mean if no one's a criminal for violating it, unless you like kill and rape someone?
It's a rhetorical concession that they don't even really mean. Well, technically, you can, but
it's lip service.
Really?
Right.
No, the whole thing's lip service, and I guarantee that Jesuit advisors are telling him of their preferred narrative of what's going on in America. I mean, it's honestly appropriate to mention at this point, Pope Francis is really old, and he clearly does not understand America or doesn't have any desire to actually talk to Americans, to work with Americans. Another thing that frustrates me about all this, and I want to get into the J.D. Vance part because it's important, there's so many different ways that he could have handled this instead of this kind of passive aggressive, I'm going to send and then publish a press release letter to the USCCB. He could have worked through the apostolic nuncio. He could have met with J.D. Vance personally. He could have had him come to Rome. He could have come to America. There's diplomatic ways to deal with this in-house if he actually wanted to have like a good faith negotiation, conversation about what America was planning to do in terms of policy. Clearly, this is not the case. I mean, to do this is to intentionally put out into the public this kind of laundry to set up a rhetorical position against the Trump-Vance administration. And rightfully so. I think the Trump-Vance administration feels attacked and like people don't want to work with them in the Catholic Church, clearly. Right. And we're talking about two high-profile Catholics right now, Tom Homan and J.D. Vance, who aren't backing down, who aren't renouncing their faith. They are Catholic. They've been very public about that. And so to see the reaction to Biden basically pushing gender ideology and abortion, not just on Americans, but the world, and then for Pope Francis to say, well, leave that to his conscience. He should talk to his pastor. And then I had some guy on Twitter, Chris Hale, be like, well, he's just calling balls and strikes. I'm like, this is not Pope Francis telling J.D. Vance, hey, I'll leave this to your conscience. Hey, talk to your pastor.
You should talk to your pastor.
This is a public shaming. And it's not even close to the same. So there's a lot of hypocrisy in that regard. But I want to read this section and then get your thoughts, Josh. And
this is more than public shaming.
All right. So 6, Christians know very well so I'll start over. Christians know very well what it is only by affirming the infinite dignity of all that our own identity as persons and as communities reaches its maturity. Christian love is not a concentric expansion of interests that little by little extend to other persons and groups. In other words, the human person is not a mere individual, relatively expansive with some philanthropic feelings. The human person is a subject with dignity who, through the constitutive relationship with all, especially with the poorest, can gradually mature in his identity and vocation. The true ordo amoris that must be promoted is that which we discover by meditating constantly on the parable of the Good Samaritan, that is, by meditating on the love that builds a fraternity to all without exception. Erica,
so
I'll start with
basically, can I just, for a moment, let's talk ordo amoris again. Yep. What he's saying here is the ordo amoris is not the ordo amoris, because the ordo amoris literally is that we are incarnate human beings in the flesh. We are not born into humanity at writ large. We are born into a family, a mother and a father to whom we owe specific duties. And then concentrically out into the world through varying degrees, we have a debt of charity to others. That is the consistent church teaching. That is the teaching of the church fathers going back to Augustine. Even before him, you can trace it, like the Bible, for example. But for him to come in and say, no, J.D. Vance got the ordo amoris wrong. which he didn't use his name, as many leftists are pointing out. They're like, they didn't say J.D. Vance. And you're like, oh, come on. But for him to come in and be like, no, the Ordo Amoris is you should meditate on the Good Samaritan constantly. Like, that's it. I'm like, where is the actual day-to-day policy and governing of the human life and moral, practical, prudential judgments that human beings, being incarnate, being sacramental beings that we are, have to make in order to live our lives day to day, in order for nations to govern and protect their peoples day to day? This is a blowing up. Again, he loves to make a mess. This is a blowing up of the church's long-held teaching and tradition on how it is we work out our holiness in this life. And it's not by loving humanity and, spending all of our energy and our wealth trying to save some unnamed person over in some country 70,000 miles away. It is in the day-to-day. Mother Teresa said, if you want to change the world, go home and love your family. She got the Ordo Amoris. Is there room for foreign aid? Absolutely. The United States, we have incredible wealth and resources, and there is a place for us to act out in the world. But for the Pope to come in and say, that's the only thing for you to do is to open your borders, let everybody in, and be fraternal. That is not respecting human dignity. It is a misunderstanding of what it means to be a human person.
Well, and we're faced with, there's always been times in human history where people have left their homeland to try to find a better life. They're escaping persecution or starvation or whatever the case may be, to try to find a new way of life. The United States has had a rich history of welcoming these people for many years. And I'd like to remind people, every time I get a chance, we have had a perhaps too generous immigration policy since Ted Kennedy put in the Immigration Act in 1965. Okay. Well over a million immigrants allowed into this country legally for well over 60 years. And the American citizens in this country are like thinking to themselves, well, we just want them to do it legally. Like we've been cool with that. But like for the last 40 years, that's been flouted. And it's just, we've allowed so many people to come into our country illegally. But something changed over the last 15, 20 years where it's just like driven up like several notches up. What we're seeing now is totally unprecedented. We're seeing a globalist progressive left push mass migration deep into the heart of Europe and up into the United States in an effort to completely transform these countries and to break like the West, the Western tradition, the Western market economies. And yeah, I object to that. I object to that strongly. And I suspect Pope Francis doesn't have a problem with that because he still looks at the United States with such disdain. And so I guess I would recall the words of Pope Pius XII. He said, it is quite legitimate for nations to treat their differences as a sacred inheritance and guard them at all costs. Boy, it'd be nice to have a pope that would understand that. And here's when we start talking about this America First thing. Oh, well, you just think America is the best country in the world. I'm like, yeah, I do. But you know what? I'm not so crazy. Like if someone in Canada, like someone emailed in the show about that, like 51st state thing. Do I want Canada? No, actually, I don't. I want Canada to be very proud of herself and her countrymen. Yeah. And I want the same for, I actually like a France that's proud of itself. Yep. Like if France said, you know what, actually, we'll give aid to people in the Middle East and these other countries, but no, we're going to return them home. And we want France to be for French people. I'd be like, that's great. I applaud that. I think that's a good thing. So I just don't understand, like, why would it be the United States that this Pope singles out? And I do believe it's because he's got, in his heart, a little hatred, I think, for the United States. It's pretty ugly, I think.
Yeah, there's a Dostoevsky quote that I think about a lot. Abstract love of humanity is nearly always love of self. And we were talking about this yesterday, like our Slack channels were blowing up. But Erica, basically what you described is the liberal white woman ethos of like thinking generally about the Good Samaritan and be like, well, yeah, these people want a better life. That's as long as my toilets get cleaned and, I have a Mexican at my favorite restaurant. I'm not exaggerating. Like it's actually genuinely almost shocking to the conscience that a mainstream argument for mass immigration is who's going to pick your crops, who's going to clean your toilets. I hear it. I see it everywhere.
We need slave labor. Yeah.
We need a slave labor force.
Right.
So what's frustrating about all of this is the status quo that existed before the Trump administration was broken and evil. Both sides were saying this is true. I'm watching President Trump and JD Vance both go and make actionable changes to the status quo for the better. Finding pedophiles, finding rapists, finding children that have been trafficked into my country, returning people back to their home countries. And genuinely, I would happily have a debate on this, measurably improve the common good of America. And what is the end goal of a country, of a nation, is to promote the common good for its citizens. And America just had an election in which it sent President Trump with a strong mandate, solve this problem. This is a problem that we all think is terrible for moral reasons, for economic reasons, for nation reasons. And this would be such a great opportunity. And this is why I really do think that Josh has a point here for the Catholic Church, especially the USCCB, to be actually aiding, communicating with, engaging with, dialoguing with this new democratically elected presidential administration and people in the pews. And because clearly those people, a majority of these people, sent him into office. I wish there was an opportunity here for our shepherds to understand us, to do what they say that they're trying to do all the time. Walk with us, learn from our lived experience.
That'd be nice.
And this privilege
synodality,
point,
right? Remember synodality?
It's like you
remember that.
It's almost like it's a one-way street. I mean, here's the thing. Pope Benedict said, states have the right to regulate migration flows and to defend their own frontiers, always guaranteeing the respect due to the dignity of each and every human person. Immigrants, however, moreover, have the duty to integrate into the host country, respecting its laws and its national identity. And so I can't help it. Like Ed Fazer had the perfect, comment on top of this quote. He said, too many churchmen today seem to have this odd opinion that this traditional Christian teaching applies to every nation except for, traditionally Christian countries.
Right.
Tony, our breaking news correspondent from the chat, broke
Tony.
some news. He said that Tulsi Gabbard was just confirmed as DNI. And that was the big question. She was the big one.
She was my least likely. Yeah.
Well, it's not a surprise today. You know how I knew that was going to happen?
Your predictive powers from Oracle of Petoskey?
Well, I said she had I definitely said she had the hardest row to go on this one. But then when JD Vance took off for France on Saturday, and I saw that RFK and Tulsi were up for votes while he was gone, I'm like, oh, well, they've obviously counted noses and they know they got at least 51.
Yeah,
he wouldn't have gone to France if his tie-breaking vote would have been needed.
Whipped him into shape. So in the title, I did promise a Tom Homan response to all of this. It didn't surprise me and it didn't disappoint.
I heard some very harsh words for the...
I got harsh words for the Pope. Pope won't fix the Catholic Church. I'm saying this as a lifelong Catholic. I was baptized Catholic. I was First Communion as a Catholic. Confirmation as a Catholic. You ought to fix the Catholic Church and concentrate on his work and leave border enforcement to us. He wants to attack us from securing our border. He's got a wall around the Vatican, does he not? So he's got a wall around to protect his people and himself, but we can't have a wall around the United States. So I wish he'd stick to the Catholic Church and fix that and leave border enforcement to us.
That is so West Carthage, New York. Like anyone who has driven through West Carthage and stopped at the gas station, that is how they talk. That is how they approach their Catholicism.
Yes.
I mean, it is. It
Smell the
so
sheep,
iconic.
baby.
That's American Catholicism right there.
That is a sheep right there. That's a ram, baby.
Oh man. I mean, so Tom Homan, this just, it almost frustrates me because this was so predictable. I knew this was coming and it feels so unnecessary, this whole thing. And rightfully so, people are pointing out the Vatican actually quietly updated their policy on their border.
Yeah.
So in December, the Vatican quietly made a base penalty between 1 to 4 years in jail and a 10K to 25K euro fine for anyone illegally entering the Vatican City state. Penalties increase if an offender uses guns, vehicles, disguises, or is in a group.
You know
that's
what?
only
JD
for
Vance
violent criminals, though, right? That's not for just anyone.
No, that's for everyone.
Oh,
JD Vance should recommend that Trump do that as an executive order and make it literally the same, and make the people who come to the country illegally have to pay it in euros.
Copy and paste.
Yeah, why not?
Oh, man.
No, the exact same penalty.
I think
You
that
have
would
to
be
pay
great.
in euros. That's good enough for the Vatican. It's good enough for us. Let's go.
Josh,
That's
run it
next
up the
Trump troll.
flagpole. Run it up the flagpole. I mean,
That's
talk
right.
about, so I just like sat and thought about this. I don't even know if this is interesting or not, but like, would I have ever imagined myself in this position? Working at Catholic Vote, the president just got put up as the Vatican ambassador. Pope Francis is in a very public feud with the new incoming administration that we very much helped get to where it was. I can't speak for Brian, but like, I imagine he's putting out fires here. What's the, could you put, I don't reveal any confidential information, but like, if you could, what is the Brian, I need a good Brian speech right now. Like I need a good, what's the Brian ethos? What is he approaching this situation with? What kind of attitude? Do you have any insight you can give us there?
I mean, I'll tell you this, the leftist people, when Brian would offer like the most mildest, corrections on Pope Francis over the years, like, this doesn't sound like the best idea in the world. Brian was always very judicious.
Very mild.
And very mild, as opposed to Vagano and other people who are like screaming, And so that made him a fierce Pope critic, according to all these leftists in the media.
Yeah.
And I think to myself, actually, I think Brian is going to do a very good job. He's somebody who truly loves and respects the church. He is going to be very respectful of Pope Francis. That's why he is nominated for this job and why I am not.
Oh man. Yeah.
We all have our role to play.
If I could,
Brian is a diplomat.
All right. Final point on setting Josh off. So if predictably, Cupich responded to this. He said he welcomed Pope Francis's letter to the U.S. bishops, saying advocacy for the dignity of migrants is, quote, the preeminent urgency at this moment.
Oh, there's that word, preeminent. That's cute.
Was that
Very
intentional,
cute.
do you think?
Oh, you think so?
Are you kidding me?
Oh.
Yeah, that's not. Do we even dig into that? Just for anyone who is, I'm sure the chat knows this, the preeminent moral issue of our time, of course, that is how the bishops have talked about abortion in the United States. During the Biden presidency, the bishops did come out and say, this is the preeminent moral issue of our time. And it is a Holocaust. I mean, they were strong on that in the statement, the written statement. And for Cupich to take that language now and apply it to, well, basically the Trump administration, saying
it
that
just drives me crazy.
It's maddening.
I knew
because
and he knows
we're
it.
talking about the Biden administration, which paid for. I mean, the Pope. Like Chris Hale, he's that leftist commie Catholic type guy who's
he started to chirp me on Twitter. Yeah. It's kind of fun.
No,
so he's like, well, no, the Pope has been critical of Biden when he was supporting abortion. Like, yeah, well, I mean, in the mildest of terms. But let's just, even on the lefties' own terms, the Biden administration, their response on immigration, they paid for transgender surgeries on migrants. They paid for illegal immigrants to get abortions.
Right.
Well,
but the problem is deporting them.
Yeah,
boggles the mind.
We paid for that, actually. They just redirected the funds. Fun fact. Okay, moving on. We got a few more things to cover. So Tulsi, that's great. I genuinely have a question, and hopefully you can add some color to this. I would love to actually get on. His name's Mike Davis. Does a lot of good work in terms of judicial, but I'm just seeing like judges block everything. So I assume Trump anticipated this, but using his Article 2 powers in the Constitution as the head of the executive branch, he's done things like the federal funding freeze. This one, I thought it caught my eye because it just seems like, what are they going to tell him next? Like, stop putting coffee pots on in 30-minute intervals. But so the latest one that got blocked here is a federal judge, John Bates, ordered Trump administration to restore pages related to progressive sex and gender healthcare, quote unquote, on the CDC, FDA, and HHS websites.
Yeah.
I went and looked it up. It's a advocacy group, I think called Doctors for Something. And everything your wildest dreams of, like the most progressive gender, whatever. Yes. To answer, yes. So they sued to get this back up. This judge basically is saying now, okay, you have to put it back up until something happens. his wife is a direct beneficiary of USAID funds through their nonprofit.
Well, I mean, who isn't really?
Yeah, true. I'm stupid. I haven't gotten any USAID funds. I'm mad.
I mean, here's the thing you could say. I mean, like it's the very beginning of this is very dubious, okay? Because there was never a law that mandated that the HHS set up a website called reproductiverights.gov, okay? Mm-hmm. Joe Biden's administration is just like, we need to promote abortion and help women in states that are now suddenly pro-life and don't have abortion. We need to help them get access to killing their babies in other states or whatever.
Wait, so did Pope Francis, he's Catholic, did Pope Francis send a letter on that?
I missed it.
Okay, sorry, continue. Missed that one. Go ahead.
So the Biden administration decides it's not like Congress said, here's the money for this, build this website. Biden on his own does it. So therefore, Trump could say, oh, well, we don't need it anymore. We're going to take it down. What's the problem?
That's it.
But done. So
it's the executive branch.
But these people you can't do that. You can't, Republican presidents cannot undo what Democratic presidents do because of article I made up in the Constitution. Like, it's so baloney. Okay, but even if they kind of came up with some fig leaf argument this is why it shouldn't happen. Argue that. But why do you have to issue an order saying, no, you have to put those websites back up while we fight this out? No. This is such hogwash.
Wait,
and
Josh,
the left-wing First Circuit's like, I guess they're right.
Okay, so I need you to just explain this like a 5-year-old. So these judges are federal judges. And to my understanding, activist groups are just like, we want that abortion website up. Lawsuit.
Right. So they sue.
And then this judge is
they judge shop.
Right.
What does that
There's
mean?
a reason.
So they find they find a federal court where there's usually one judge in that little area, and they know they're going to get this guy, and they come up to that court and they file a lawsuit, and ding, they get this super liberal guy, and he issues a nationwide injunction. So because this one guy in this one little federal district decides, then it has to stop.
And those judges are not elected.
Correct.
No,
they are appointed.
They're not. I mean, there's no federal judges that are elected, of course.
So a president places them there.
So the president would have appointed that person. The Senate would have had to have confirmed him. But again, the point is, it's one thing if that judge says, well, I think this website should still go up. Here's what's going on. A judge can issue an injunction and can basically stop an action and say, we want it to be corrected because we think there's irreparable harm. Okay. In the case of, let's say, one of these migration policies, let's say Trump does this, remain in Mexico policy, right? And the judge were to say, well, we're concerned there might be irreparable harm. Like people actually might get hurt, harmed, brutalized, whatever, because of this action. So we're going to freeze it while we judge whether or not it's constitutional. And there's an argument there for the ability to allow a judge to freeze something because you need it, because there might be irreparable harm that can't be undone. Okay. But in this case, what's the irreparable harm? Like a website's not up? Like no one else knows how to Google to get an abortion? Like what is the harm? I mean, it's so farcical. And again,
I have
Clarence Thomas has been very clear about this. He thinks it is radical that we just allow one judge in the middle of nowhere to put a freeze on something forever. And so because of this, conservatives did the same thing too. It's not asymmetrical warfare. We find the one judge out in West Texas or whatever, and we put a stomp on things. It's like, hey, if these are the rules of the game, both sides are going to play it. It's just a crappy way of doing.
It's a crappy game, right?
Yeah, it's crap.
So I assume President Trump anticipated this with a lot of his orders.
Oh, yeah.
So that being said, to my understanding, the way to resolve this is to put it on an emergency docket with the Supreme Court, saying that it would be ruled on in like a week, like something very fast. Is this an accurate assessment?
That's what would make sense. If we are really talking about irreparable harm and urgency, you would see, maybe we should address this as quickly as possible. That's not how they want to play the game, though. So the left is going to want to delay and delay and delay. And not just in the case of a website going up, but in all these injunctions that we're seeing. And I mean, the website one is kind of like the extreme one that catches your eye, but there's there's tons of these challenges right now.
Absolutely.
Coming up through the courts, some of which to delay them is preserving the status quo. They want to preserve the status quo of the deep state and the bureaucracy. So the longer they can take, because they don't really believe there's irreparable harm going on. They don't really believe that.
No, of course not. Wow. Right. I mean, they'll come up with some fancy theory, but the thing is,
right.
The danger here is that on the left is that they should have just let this one go. Like, what's the theory in which the president of the United States, can put up a website on something and then his successor can't say, I don't want that, I'm going to take it down. Like,
we're going to lose this one.
Is there something I'm missing where the president has certain powers only if he's a Democrat, and like if the Republicans have no powers? Like, it's just baloney. So by staking this case like this, you're inviting the Supreme Court, even with Judge John Roberts, who's a knucklehead these days. You're inviting the 6-3 court to go full bore, and actually, there's a lot of conservatives like me who want the Supreme Court to ratify the notion that we have a unitary executive,
right?
That the Article 2 gives the President of the United States the authority to execute the laws, and therefore he should be able to fire anyone in the executive branch. He should be able to impound funds. He should be able to turn off a damn website. So I mean,
can I ask then? You're saying then it would basically just be the Supreme Court re-clarifying what should already be true right now, that under Article 2 of the Constitution, they have the power, rightfully so. And then all these judges are kind of
what we've dealt with by a lot of these federal judges over the last 10 years or so is, Barack Obama would do something through executive order, and then Trump come in and would undo it. And then the courts would say, oh, no, you can't do that. What on the earth? It just drives you mad. And again, I worry for my country where we have a two-tier system of justice, because it's like, wait, why is it that, like, it's almost like it's not almost, it's exactly like this. Liberals think everything you want is unconstitutional. Sorry. So even if you win, you don't get to do anything you want. Like, excuse me? It's absolutely bonkers. Like, it's crazy. Like, what is the theory in which you can say that Donald Trump can't unplug this website? It's bonkers.
Right. Call me naive too, but I understand there to be. So the argument I'm seeing against this is there's like a legitimate separation of power that our country was designed to have. But to my understanding, the executive branch should enjoy executive authority, therefore executive action. And the Congress is meant to legislate, and judges aren't supposed to legislate. They're supposed to just basically say, is this constitutional? Yes. Is it not constitutional? No, on like the federal circuit. So even the concept of an injunction to me is kind of bizarre. Like, that just feels like a bug in maybe a better feature where, like, basically in a better world, Dr. Save America or whatever, they come with this dumb lawsuit and they're just told by a federal judge, like, yes, that's constitutional, or no, that's not constitutional. You can't just delay. Like, this doesn't feel like
one thing I want to get at, though, is that, like, we have this theory and everyone traces it back to Mary versus Madison or whatever. And it's like this idea that the judicial branch has the final authority on the Constitution, and the Supreme Court has the final authority. And I'm like, no, we have three branches of government. Okay. Mm-hmm. And the Supreme Court, sorry guys, sometimes gets it damn wrong. And the executive can say whether or not he can abide by the court order, or he can defy it. And if he defies it, what can you do? Congress can impeach a president that defies the court. We have three branches of government. They all actually have sworn a duty to uphold and enforce the Constitution. So this idea that, well, the judiciary just gets to do whatever they want, they are the overseers of the Constitution and no one else is? Like, no, that's not how it works. So if, again, it's precisely because the three branches have not exercised their authority in ways that they have. There are mechanisms in the separation of powers. Like, if you had asked the founding fathers, like, first of all, can you imagine that the federal government would cooperate with businesses to suppress free speech of people? They would have lost their minds, right?
Right.
But if they also would have been surprised by the fact that, like, we never impeach a judge ever. like, why? Like, some of these people are downright crazy. Like, they should be impeached, and we never do, and like they actually thought that the presidents would be impeached and removed from office much more frequent than they are. There's only been one, like Johnson came close. He was within a vote of being removed from office. They would have thought it would have been much more frequently. They would have thought that each of these three branches of government would have been, guarding their own power. But like they wouldn't even have fathomed that Congress would have just, ceded so much of its power to the executive and to and to the judiciary. They all have a responsibility to uphold and enforce the Constitution. And if the Supreme Court is full of crap on something, tell them to go pound sand.
Yeah, which we did, because they were full of crap on Roe v. Wade and Casey. But I think I just wanted to like back it up a little bit to like the broader view of like, this is what we're talking about when we talk about the inversion of the constitutional order, right? That the judges, I think too many people see the system as Congress passes a law, the president's going to execute it, and then the judiciary is the backstop and the final say over what law is constitutional, what the law means, how it can be applied, and all that. That's usurpation of the judicial role, like Josh is saying. And our system has checks and balances, but those checks and balances are incumbent upon each branch also performing its intended function. So the Congress legislates, they write the laws. The president executes. He decides how to do that. Those two branches are our direct representatives. It's the voice of the people, as close as it can get, at the federal level, right? The appointed federal judiciary, their edicts aren't like redeemed by good consequences. They aren't like, oh, well, they had to step in and fix this, right? What they can say is what the people's representatives are doing in this case is unconstitutional, or it doesn't, but they can't be like, okay, we don't like the way this is going, so we're just going to start legislating from the bench, which is what, especially under the Warren Court in the 90s, we saw happening, and what hopefully is being corrected.
It wasn't the Warren Court in the 90s, but...
sorry. It was at the 80s. Did I get my decade?
Wow, it's like the 70s.
Oh, ouch. Oh, man. I'm stuck in the 90s. It's my like...
Stuck in the 90s. Your vibe.
Stuck in the 90s. That's what I do.
Just in an episode of Friends. Or
I
can't imagine
the worst.
that you...
Don't get me started on Friends. Oh, my gosh.
I can't imagine Erica is a Friends fan. I really cannot imagine that.
How did you know?
Josh, do you have any niche 90s TV shows that you're a fan of?
I mean, 90s shows like
West Wing? Were you a West Wing guy?
No, actually, West Wing is pretty much the creation of the modern woke left.
Totally,
you can trace back all of their religious fervor to that stupid show.
It's true.
I mean, what TV shows would I watch in the night? I don't even know.
My parents are big. My parents are big
You're
Seinfeld
too busy
fans.
studying. Oh yeah, Seinfeld.
So I've seen some heavily redacted Seinfeld episodes as a child because some of them are pretty inappropriate. But show about nothing. Okay, so speaking of stuff, how much time do we got? Should we go Twilight Zone now?
We could do Twilight Zone.
We
now.
should. I gotta hop.
All right, let's rock, Josh. What Twilight Zone do you have?
Well, I mean, there's so many to go with, but I like this article on Politico that came out where they said voters were right about the economy. The data was wrong. Here's why unemployment is higher, wages are lower, and growth less robust than government statistics suggested. Like,
are you serious?
Oh yeah,
huh?
Yeah. Like what a shock. And this comes as the inflation for January, Biden's last month, was higher than expected. It's because he was spending money like no one's tomorrow going out the door.
Yep. Gold bars out of a helicopter.
Like, what happens when you manipulate jobs number and Fed reports over and over and over and over again for so long that you delay the inevitable? So,
Wait a second. Wait a second. Is this
Politico
has really changed its tune, it feels like, in the last few days. Was there anything that was revealed.
Hey, that was false, debunked smear campaign against poor Politico. Here's my thing. They're just coming to this conclusion, and they're saying that when we want our federal government spending $10,000 a year on subscriptions to these guys, and they're just noticing that the Biden economy sucked. Like, come on, this is ridiculous.
I got another one for you
too. About this for years. Oh, no,
Josh or Erica, noticing is a little bit different than my funding structure has significantly changed.
Good distinction.
Josh. Oh, this is a good one.
Oh yeah.
So apparently in the stores now they have
oh my gosh
greeting cards for work wife and work husband, and some people are like, oh, it's just meant to be silly, but no, actually I think it's meant to be exactly what you think.
I wouldn't recommend doing this. This doesn't feel like it's a good idea.
Yeah,
but not just that. That's not just the only one that's morally objectionable and makes you want to vomit.
Oh boy.
If you look below, it says, I love being your cat. I love being your dog. These are greeting cards that people get.
Oh, from the pet.
From the pet.
Nice. Do you think they sign it?
The way Joe Biden was signing his executive orders.
So for all those fur moms and fur dads, you know.
All right. Don't do work wife. Don't do work husband. Don't do from your animals.
Yeah.
Chat engagement opportunity. What works? Valentine's Day.
Oh, and by the way, I am a very much 2 thumbs down on all Valentine's Day. My wife,
just in general, so
you're not a big fan of me for saying that. I know, Lori, I love you, but to me, this idea that we're all going to get together and we're all going to be romantic on this one day together. First of all, it's kind of a poke in the eye to people who are single. I never really like that. And second of all, like for my wife and I, like to me, like August 2nd, the first day we met, August 15th, our first date. Thanksgiving Day when I proposed to her, and our anniversary, July 2nd. That's what matters to me, not some Hallmark manufactured card holiday phooey.
So do you think Mother's Day is stupid too?
I mean,
should we celebrate moms every day?
Yeah, that was a remarkable period of silence after that comment from Erica. So two things. Josh, great job. You could have also just said, because I treat every day like Valentine's Day because I'm so romantic. Missed opportunity would have been cool.
I don't treat every day the same.
True, though. Yeah.
If you treat every day the same, then they don't mean anything. If you don't elevate certain days, and I do, I elevate the days we first met, when we first had a date, when I proposed to her, and our anniversary.
I'm stepping in here. So for like the first 6 years of our marriage, I wanted to be like all cool and like, I don't need Valentine's Day. Valentine's Day is so dumb. We celebrate Cyril and Methodius Day with our kids.
Good.
But in my heart of hearts, when Todd did not produce said flowers, chocolates, dates on those Valentine's Day, I was a little resentful. I'm like, well, okay, fine. I guess I'm tough. So then eventually I just broke down. I was like, I would like flowers and I would like chocolates and hearts and a nice date for our, it doesn't have to be on the day. It's a Friday this year. It's kind of rough, but I would like to be acknowledged. Cool. So yeah, I'm not as purist and thoughtful as Josh, but I'll be commercial. I like it.
Erica, I think I appreciate your communication. I'll say this from the fellow men community that sometimes need to be told exactly what they would like from, because I can't read mine.
Well, is it only a one-way street to women? I never understood that. It's like the men are supposed to, show affection, all this other stuff, and like, like women, like, what?
Yeah, you are.
We're stepping in it, Josh. We're stepping in it. There's this.
I'm very anti-equity.
Anti-equity.
Yo, shout out Saint Cyril and Methodius, though. I grew up at a
they are sick.
Slovak parish in Detroit. Saint Cyril and Methodius. Very chill.
Both saints are great. Just send me both and your wife.
Send me cute send me cute Valentine's Day ideas or things that have been done for you or things that you've done that have been good. We need some of that energy today.
We could do flops too.
Flops, yeah, I'll take it.
Flops on Friday. Love it.
I actually, you know what? Yeah, I will read those. If you send me an email, loopcast@catholicvote.org. I would love to hear some of these stories. Or you can send it in the chat right now. That would very much make me happy.
Great Friday segment.
If I'm here. Who knows? Maybe my Valentine's Day gift is actually due date is technically February 14th. So
that would be really cute.
Would be very cute.
You'd name her Cyrilia.
Very cute. And someone was like, you're going like, you cannot forget about Valentine's Day. Like, doesn't matter. You have a baby that day. Someone needs to bring flowers. It doesn't matter. You got to make it happen. I was like, all right, thanks for the reminder. I would have forgotten. Okay, Erica, your Twilight Zone.
I'm just gonna do a couple of Trump trolls here because there were some. Dead naming became a thing during the Biden administration. How you can't like dead name Rachel Levine or something because that's not. It's saying she doesn't exist or something, or he doesn't exist anymore. Well, the Trump troll has struck again, and it is they are coming down on the AP for dead naming.
As
Trump cracks down on the AP for dead naming the Gulf of America. Yes, that's right. The AP issued a statement on why they will not be calling the Gulf of America, but they will stick to the Gulf of Mexico. And so the AP says, today we were informed by the White House that if AP did not align its editorial standards with President Donald Trump's executive order renaming the Gulf of Mexico as the Gulf of America, AP would be barred from accessing an event, just one event, just a little slap on the wrist, at the Oval Office. This afternoon, our reporter was blocked from attending an executive order signing. It is alarming that the Trump administration, here comes the book-burning Nazis charge. It is alarming that the Trump administration would punish AP for its independent journalism, limiting our access to the Oval Office based on the content of our speech. Not only severely impedes the public's access to independent news, it plainly violates.
Erica, stop! You're watering down my coffee with my tears.
I know.
And I have a controversial take here, actually.
Right. Whoa, Josh, bring it.
Here we go.
What do you
think? I mean, it's certainly not a violation of the First Amendment or free speech or all that kind of stuff. That's a bunch of garbage. That's West Wing BS stuff that they're writing. But I don't think Trump should have kicked them out because they refused to refer to it as the Gulf of America. I did see a funny little meme online where it said the Tostitos Bowl Gulf of America brought to you by Home Depot on the map, which I thought was pretty funny. But honestly, I think this is all just kind of an exercise that Donald Trump's doing. I think it's playful. I think it's meant to be like just kind of make people giggle and stuff like that. But I think there's a point to it, which is to say, do we want to? What should we name this? Should it be the executive himself that just decides on a whim to change the name? And so people are basically saying no. One person, Donald Trump, should not just, even if he's the president, shouldn't be able to just radically change the name of something that we've all called something for generations. Well, isn't that kind of funny? Because what happened also this last week, Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth took Fort Liberty and rechanged the name back to Fort Bragg. Because Fort Bragg was named after a Confederate general, so Lloyd Austin went in there and changed all these names to like Fort Liberty and all this kind of stuff. It's no longer Fort Benning, I forget what that one got changed to. Yeah. So Pete Hegseth, in his wisdom, was like, okay, we'll name it after a different Bragg, who was a World War II patriot and was super awesome. And now it's Fort Bragg again, but it's just a different Bragg. So you can't really like remove the name again in the future. But the whole point is
they'll try.
They probably will. But again, it's like, so if you're saying that Donald Trump shouldn't just unilaterally change the name of something, well, then why did you do it to all these military bases?
Right. Or Mount Denali, right? Like,
yeah. So like if we as a country think, we should get rid of every, army base that has a Confederate name, that should maybe that should be debated in the halls of Congress and come up with some sort of a solution or something like that, compromise, instead of just having one guy go in there and unilaterally change it all. So
I agree.
I think the Gulf of America thing is kind of a silly gimmicky thing or whatever, but I find more telling the people who object to it. Like, oh, really? So we shouldn't just unilaterally change names and not care. Oh, okay. I know, slightly separate subject, but the tears flowing for when they took down Mark Milley in
his portrait.
What was that? In the Pentagon, they took down
in the Pentagon.
Like, this is how Nazism starts, taking down paragons of what. Like, Mark Milley was objectively a terrible general who lied and he completely dishonored himself.
This from the ideology
Trump.
That tore down
and
Columbus.
You took down all my statues. You took down everything. I was like, I could not. It's just the iron. Do they just wake up and are just like they don't even think beyond like 2 years ago, maybe 5 minutes ago? I'm like,
But they were able to control the media so much. I mean, Trump was like, hey, if you take down the statues of slave owners, then pretty, the Confederates, and then pretty soon every slave owner, pretty much everyone, you're going to take down statues of George Washington and Thomas Jefferson. I was like,
it was never,
I'm not going
Josh,
to do that.
That's the thing. It was never about the Confederates. It was always about trying to make it slave owners to always get back to all the statues and things that made our country what it is.
Right.
And I really found this telling too. I think I wasn't here for when we discussed the big balls situation with DOGE, but I think
we might have skipped that.
might have skipped that. But there's this whole thing of like he made some edgy jokes online.
Oh, that wasn't Big Balls. That was a different guy.
No, that was Big Balls.
No,
I'm almost positive it's Big Balls.
I'm fact checking.
Regardless, guy with funny nickname, and JD Vance broke their spell by basically being like, I like to live in a world where we forgive people and your online history doesn't dictate, whether or not you can live a good life and have your life ruined. And I just think it's important to know, like, oh gosh, I think I just removed Josh. Or did he drop?
Oh, he left.
I think it's important. And I have one more thing before this, but you don't give your enemies, don't let your enemies be the moral police. Because they don't care about morality. Like what happened in that situation was an activist reporter combed through this guy's entire life to try to find something that would be morally objectionable enough to ruin his life. She doesn't care about whether or not he actually is a good person or whether or not he's good or qualified at the job.
Or
that's
he's
not important.
Changed since he was
or that
14.
he's changed or that he's apologized or whatever. Like that's not the point. That's not why these people are doing this. And I think in the same regard to the statue debate, like they actually don't care about the virtue or contributions of our founding fathers, of those kind of men. I think this is why I draw the line at General Lee. General Lee, I think, was one of the greatest living Americans at the time. And whether or not you think that, of course, like slavery was bad. This is like they always start this. Of course, I think slavery was bad. But General Lee was instrumental actually into healing the nation by bringing the Confederate Army honorably back in, treating them as brothers. And I think the Union general at the time accepted that, and they started the process of healing. Like these are Americans. They were brothers. The true tragedy of the Civil War, of course, slavery was on stake, but it was the fact that brothers were fighting brothers. Mm-hmm. And I think without a man as good as General Lee, who also fought honorably in the Mexican-American War, was treated by all his men, treated as an incredible, virtuous man, even by people that he captured, he treated them well. He's an American. He's a part of this history. And you get to have that discussion about our history in good faith from people who care. You don't let your enemies and activists and people who don't share that get to determine what is right and wrong because they don't care about what's truly right and wrong. That window shifts all the time to fit whatever they're trying to accomplish. So don't give your enemies moral authority over you at any time. And the JD Vance thing I think is so important. And I wish I had more time to talk about it because he broke the spell. He just said, you are my enemy, activist press. And I'm not going to let you decide whether or not this kid is a racist or not. I'm talking to him. I'm working with the DOGE team. I understand his character. And people behind the scenes were doing the same thing. We're going to make that decision, not you, as it's been done previously in the cycle of exposure, leaks, pressure campaigns. I mean, the kid got death threats and everything like that. That's so ridiculous. And so you don't have any power.
Right. I think what JD Vance really put his finger on too, and when he said, look, like stupid tweets from 14-year-olds, like that's not what threatens my kids. What threatens my children is a culture in which there is no mercy and in which we are willing to weaponize everything someone says against them. Now, are there things that go too far? Like, hey, Kanye West. Now there's someone where I don't think he should ever be hired by anyone again.
He's bipolar. He's bipolar. And he's just doing it
again. I mean, to that point, you shouldn't hire bipolar people who aren't sure what's going on. And, but I think that what he's getting at there is, and what you're touching on is that the fundamental sickness in our country is a lack of mercy and a desire to weaponize and to go tribal. And I mean, we could go on and on. I know we're running late here, but it's
two things that were so rich about this and actually personally happened to me is like anyone under the age of 40 is going to have some digital footprint. And we've lived. And what's stupid is, Ro Khanna or whatever, who's definitely older than 40, he gets to enjoy the asymmetrical warfare of like, what he was saying in college or in high school, not being available for everyone to view. And so you basically, I can speak from experience, have to live in fear from like expressing your true point of view online for fear of not being able to get hired later. Because like they talk about the Overton window, right? Like what's acceptable, what's an acceptable opinion at the time. We lived in a world not long ago where if you said a man cannot be a woman, you're basically banned from polite society. You might not get hired at Google. You might not get hired over here. So like the window constantly shifts, and it's important that you're able to say what you want. And the funniest thing about all of this too, oh man, I'm blanking on this. Like yes. All the people that were so just faux outraged about JD Vance selling out his family. They're like, oh my gosh, you married an Indian woman. You have Indian children. How could you sell out your whole family? These are the same people that didn't invite MAGA relatives to Thanksgiving. So like, spare me, please. Like you didn't allow people that didn't get the COVID vaccine into your homes or even live their own lives. So I don't want to hear anything about your sudden discover of family values and tribalism and things like that to JD Vance, who like clearly is just like, this kid made a mistake, married an Indian woman, has biracial children.
Who he carts around Europe on his shoulder, and it's adorbs.
Right. The picture of him and the kids in India was so funny. Like the youngest was just like not having it.
Yeah, he was not happy. I was like, I know that expression. I see it on my children's faces regularly.
Yeah. So
new normies are back.
Erica, I guess you and I get to enjoy this. I'm not exaggerating. Like I kind of started by like, this is making fun of it, but then it got stuck in my head, and I've kind of been singing in my head basically this whole episode. So new banger dropped, new Resistance banger dropped. I'm going to play for all of us to enjoy.
Which side are you on? Which side are you on? Tell me, which side are you on? Which side are you on? We'll fight against DOGE. We'll fight Elon Musk. No Elon scab within our walls. We'll fight from dawn to dusk. Which side are you on? Which side are you on?
If I ever start doing this, Tom, when I'm like 65, if I ever start doing
Don't worry,
this,
you never will.
Can you just like shoot me down?
You never will.
Man. There comes a time in a woman's life when you shouldn't do that. I mean, God bless them. They're very passionate.
I mean, where do I start?
Yeah, but like,
it's kind of a banger, first off.
Do they? Well, I mean,
I'm not going to lie.
You
kind
are
of a
white boy,
it was
but that's
stuck.
Like,
listen, it was stuck in my head the whole time. I also love the very obvious, what would we call it? Like a tribute to like slave.
There's a spiritual element there.
Yeah. Like slave hymns as if somehow they're enslaved by Elon Musk auditing the government. The one thing that actually, final thing I'll say on this, because we're talking about Elon and DOGE. I can't get over how outrageous it is that a federal judge somewhere in the country, dial a judge, get this lawsuit, thinks that the Secretary of Treasury should not be able to look at Treasury numbers.
Yeah.
And they're just like, nope, can't do that. What are we doing here? And like, if they're auditing, we have nothing to be worried about. And exactly. I actually saw, who is it? Ron Paul. They're saying that they're going to let Ron Paul audit the Fed.
I'm so excited for that.
I'll say about libertarians, as someone with some libertarian sensibilities, but I think as a political ideology is kind of self-defeating. Mm-hmm. How awesome is it that the Trump coalition basically has libertarians the closest to power they've ever been, to the point where the guy, Ron Paul, would get to look at Fed numbers is dude, just
I love this big tent. We've got a ways to go in our nation, but I do like the big tent. And Ron Paul, you go for it.
Go for it, Ron. And I end with, which side are you on? And you're welcome.
Yeah, I have to think about that.
That banger is going to be stuck.
Thanks, Pogo.
You're welcome. But thank you for hanging out with us this episode. Appreciate it. We got a lively live chat today. Appreciate having you guys all here. Tony, you need to change your profile name to Tony Breaking News Correspondent for the Loopcast chat. Mm-hmm. Get on that ASAP. Thank you for the reviews. Apple Podcasts and Spotify. If you guys want to leave us some reviews there, that helps out a lot. You can email me, loopcast@catholicvote.org. If you want to support us, go check out Charity Mobile. Go check out Divine Providence Press. Become a champion. Excuse me. CatholicVote.org/champions. But praying for us, always the best thing. St. Thomas More, St. Fidelis, Our Lady of Guadalupe. Pray for us. And we'll see you guys on Friday. Hopefully I'll be there.
Hey, maybe not.
we'll see. See you guys then.